Okay, so let's move over to Hawaii. This is in Lahaina Harbor, and I'm going to start out with, once again, just a quick sketch. One thing you may notice here is, as I sketch this, I'm not happy with my design. Even, I'm taking very little time, very little investment right now, so I'm not concerned. I haven't put all the time in if it's wrong. This is the stage to really understand your design. If I don't like it at this stage, I'm not going to be inspired the rest of the painting. And even though this is going to be a quick color rough, I want to still base it on a design I like. So you can see I keep changing until I finally get to a point of, okay, I think this balance is the best. Remember, balance without symmetry. Okay, so let's now put in those values, still using the value key at the bottom, those 7 values. And we're going to put it in to try to get that atmospheric perspective and still show the scene. I'm not going to refine every boat and the house and every detail. I'm going to certainly put in notes to represent those things. But I strongly believe that the idea of 100 starts is better than 1 finish. If we are able to do 100 starts where we're just putting the correct value and the correct color together to create depth, to create the sense of light, to create the environment that you want in the right mood, eventually putting in details. You're going to see later, the palm trees are pretty bulky right now, but even at this small size, I think you'll see how quickly I can manipulate those to at least give them a feel of a palm tree or coconut tree here. So let's now move into color. I wanted to put in those coconut tree trunks in there before I went much further to make sure that value showed there. Those are my darkest values, so those are in front of the distant trees. Once again, I'm not color picking. You'll see as I grab and test and move and change. If you look at the photo, the hillside goes really gold and different colors in it, and it's just a little bit too extreme for my examples of what I want to show with atmosphere. Everything starts to come a little bit too close. And if you find that your different planes in the distance are feeling like they're all moving too close or too far, it's usually a value and a saturation problem. The other thing you may notice in both of these, I'm really posterizing the idea, which is I'm very graphically showing how to do this. This isn't about really the refinement. It's more, how do I get these shapes to relate? Because once you do that, the refinement is, I believe, not nearly as difficult as this. One thing you have to know when you're dealing with water, this is a side note, maybe a whole nother lesson plan on dealing with water, but water is influenced by the color of the water and the reflection. So if you notice when you go into the water, their darks can't be as dark and the lights can't be as light because they're both being influenced by the water. You see just kind of building and just giving enough information that something's happening there in the, underneath the trees, that there's some sort of building, and eventually there'll be some sort of boats, but we're not getting too in-depth with those right now. So let's talk about what causes atmospheric perspective. Certainly humidity, fog, mist, I have that where I live, lots of it, so that will certainly affect. What else could affect it? Rain. Storms or rain, you're putting even more water into the atmosphere if you see rain in the distance. Wind or dust can pick up particles. When you're in the desert, you certainly see that. A time of day, the angle of the sun, the way the sun comes through, you'll see a lot more atmosphere at the beginning of the day and the end of the day. That's why we like to get out in it so much. Pollution. In areas that you have pollution, it still gives that atmospheric perspective. Okay, and what does it do? Pollution, what do these things do? They give less clarity in the distance. And I think a lot of times it's kind of hard to explain this, but it might be less contrasty in the distance, but it does seem bright. There's a brightness to it. I don't know the cause, but I think the sky, because you're painting light and atmosphere, it's the illumination of that. Okay, I said I wasn't going to refine, like I mentioned, but you can see this is the only time in the whole thing I'm using another brush. And I came in quickly with a soft brush to soften that distant mountain and to soften the water. And you may also notice, as I was talking, how I took those coconut trees and just how quickly, just little details gave them a little more form, a little more gesture to the design of especially the canopy, the top of the tree. And you can see that you can refine details as much as you'd like to go within a painting, but until you get this, like I'm putting in little details to show there's something happening here in front of these trees in the water, boats, what is it, harbor, something's happening. But if you don't get the big shapes, those relationships won't matter. So now I thought it'd be a good idea to do what I did in the oak tree painting and just show you different ideas of what it looks like as I send that mountain more into the distance or create even more atmosphere around it. Why are we using atmospheric perspective? Because it helps create depth, creates an airiness or a space to your painting. Okay, what else does it do? It really helps in designing shapes, because a lot of times in the distance, if you can use enough atmospheric perspective, you can then be using the silhouettes of the foreground shapes, even the silhouette of the distant shape. And it really helps in designing. You don't have to render as much. You take something in the distance and it's just one big graphic shape. It really helps. It also sets a mood when done correctly.